Even though it was the usual July heat in Atlanta, the air inside the lavish home Lil Scrappy and Bambi had built together was thick with a treachery that was much more dangerous than the heat. Betraying them could ruin everything they had worked for, even turning love into ashes. Bambi was sitting in their living room with her heart racing while her phone rang constantly on the coffee table. The news was catastrophic, a storm she had never expected, and she had just hung up with her lawyer. Little items that had slipped between the cracks had created weeks of anguish. Strange bank withdrawals, unexplained transactions, and now the truth was undeniable. She never thought that whoever was in charge of the money's disappearance would turn on her. With shaking hands, she picked up her phone and glanced over the message from her lawyer, Erica Dixon, once more. The name burned in her chest like an open sore. The only person Bambi could trust was Erica, the ex who had always hung over Scrappy's life, the woman who had revealed his past, and the one person she could never forget. Bambi had always thought she could trust a distant family member. She thought the $3 million had been stolen and was moving through a series of increasingly intricate accounts, but the evidence pointed straight to Erica. Standing in the middle of their home, where they had laughed, cried, and dreamed together, Bambi felt a knot tighten in her gut, knowing that she had to tell Scrappy what she needed to do. Even though she was aware that he would ruin everything, she had no choice. Even though Scrappy had been working late to finish several music projects that had kept him occupied for days, Bambi waited silently for the encounter, knowing it couldn't go well. Exhausted eyes scanned the room when he eventually entered, and Bambi got to her feet, her cheeks cold and her hands shivering. "We need," she told Scrappy. He grimaced and put his luggage next to the door to talk. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said. "What's happening?" Bambi didn't know where to start. She swallowed hard before telling the truth, even though the words felt like a kick to her stomach. "What do you tell a man you love if someone close stole millions?" Her voice was shaking with anger and disbelief. "Erica took the money away from me." "What are you discussing? How was she able to do that?" Scrappy's entire body went rigid as he froze. Bambi's voice cracked as she lifted her phone. "I have proof that the fraudulent accounts were wired. She succeeded and everything is in place." She took the $3, determined. Because he didn't want to accept it, Scrappy's face went white and his jaw tensed as he understood what she was saying. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room. The idea that Erica, the mother of his child, would do something like this was like a kick in the gut, even though she had always been engaged in their lives in one way or another. "Do you really think you know how things could go wrong?" "Erica, you're telling me." Scrappy ran a hand through his hair and paced back and forth. Bearing the guilt of betrayal, Bambi replied acidly, "I wouldn't be telling you this if I wasn't certain that Erica took your money." "The money's gone, Scrappy," she mentioned. "I can say that she is the one who's stolen no other way." From my own, Scrappy's gloomy eyes twitched, and he stopped pacing. The tension between them grew as he realized he no longer knew whom to trust, and primal triggered feelings of hurt, rage, and incredulity that swirled together. What if his ex was telling the truth about the terrible thing he had been accused of by the woman he had been married to and who had given birth to his children? With his voice breaking under the strain of everything that was ripping him apart, Scrappy mumbled as he ran his hands through his hair again. How on earth did this happen? The pain in his voice was too much for Bambi to bear. Even after Scrappy and Erica had a falling out, she had continued to trust Erica as a member of their extended family. Their arguments, and there was no going back now that the truth was out. Scrappy turned toward the door, his fists clenched, and I had to imagine he yelled as loudly as stone. "I require space." Anxiety, anger, and betrayal were prevalent in one house that was far from the glitz and lights on a brilliant July evening in Atlanta, even though the city was buzzing with the usual NTI and neon lights. Bambi had always been the picture of calm and composure. Her life seemed perfect. A loving marriage to Lil Scrappy, a growing family, and a profession that was moving forward steadily. But all changed when the bombshell was delivered. Bambi revealed that Erica Dixon, her husband's ex-wife, had stolen $3. On a quiet Thursday morning, Bambi had just arrived home from a work trip, her suitcase still at the door. She discovered an unexpected wire transfer while looking through her emails, and it wasn't from any of her typical partners. Bewildered, she looked at the information and was devastated to see that her account had been debited by over $3 million. Even though she had trusted her financial counselor, the purchase didn't make sense, and she was determined to find out why. A few days after Bambi called her lawyer, who thoroughly investigated her story, the truth was revealed. The value of the money had dropped. the woman who had been a part of their lives but whose shadows appeared to remain much longer than Bambi had ever thought. Erica Dixon was the one who had been transferred through a number of shell corporations. Not just because Erica had deceived her, but also because of how easily her trust had been twisted, Bambi was incensed. The sense of violation was more painful than the money alone. She had always considered Erica to be a far-off aspect of the past, but suddenly the past had returned with a force, and she was unable to bear it any longer. As she phoned the number for her spouse of nearly 5 years, Lil Scrappy, her hands shook. When he finally answered after a few rings, his voice became heavier on Bambi's chest. Even though Scrappy was speaking calmly, Bambi could see that his tone had altered. He was obviously anticipating something bad. She replied, "We need to talk," in a voice that was tight with anger and astonishment at what had happened, baby. Erica was the one who stole the $3 million. As Bambi realized what she was saying, she could almost hear his heartbeat thumping through the phone. "How could she have done it, Erica?" With his head clearly reeling from the charge, Scrappy mumbled. "Scrappy, I'm not making this up. Here in black and white, everything is fine." Proof. Bambi, trembling with a mix of anger and grief, snarled her voice while Scrappy was caught up in a rush of emotions he couldn't understand. Although Erica, the mother of his daughter, had always caused him and Bambi to argue, he never thought she would take from his wife. He had always attempted to maintain harmony between them, but this was too much for his racing thoughts. He knew deep down that there was more going on here than he could have ever imagined. Yet he slammed the phone down and went out of the house, his fists knotted, seeking answers and confronting Erica. Previously, the man had tried to keep his wife and his ex-partner amicable, but now he was being forced to take sides in a betrayal that could ruin everything. Scrappy was furious as he drove up to Erica's house, but before he could even knock, the door sprang wide, and Erica was there in front of him, calm as if she had expected this moment. Scrappy said in a sweet voice, but there was a trace of haughtiness and conceit that infuriated him. "You're here, but why?" Scrappy didn't waste any time in courteous dialogue. "Erica, I know you stole Bambi's money. How could you have harmed her like that? You think I stole it? I didn't steal anything that wasn't mine, so that's funny." Erica's lips curled into a smug grin as she raised an eyebrow. "First of all, though, it's cute that you think you can protect her." "Scrappy, Erica, you have no idea what you're doing. You're mistaken to believe that I'll allow you to harm my wife. It will cost you. Perhaps you should take a closer look at who is actually in charge of this, Scrappy," but Erica just laughed undisturbed. "If you say so." He stood there even more perplexed and enraged than he had ever been at home when she shut the door in his face. As the love of her life collapsed in front of her, Bambi sat on the couch, her thoughts racing and uncertain of what to do. The $3 million was about more than just money. It was about breach of trust and the evil that may lurk behind well-known faces. Her worst enemy was now the woman who had been her greatest opponent. A few hours later, Lil Scrappy returned home looking perplexed and irritated. Since the battle lines had been drawn and no one knew how things would ultimately play out, he had no answers, just more questions. But one thing was for sure: their lives would never be the same again. In the now heavy silence between them, Bambi and Scrappy stood facing each other in the corridor. Erica's smile remained even though neither of them knew how to repair the damage that had been done. Taught them that sometimes the people you trust the most can become your deadliest adversaries. As the story went on, it became clear that this was more than just a financial fraud. Rather, it was a conflict between loyalty and love, as well as the harsh reality that sometimes the ones you love can betray you in unexpected ways.